Nothing shall prevent me from having my revenge, old friend. Not even you.
As for the crowd control, Death Knight has multiple abilities for crowd controlling the enemy. One of the strongest ones is Strangulate. It lasts for 5 or 7 seconds. 7 seconds if you manage to use it on an opponent that is casting a spell. It is a silence effect. The enemy cannot use any damaging or healing spell while he's silenced. Ideally, you want to use Strangulate when you're bursting or when the opponent is on low HP and he's gonna want to heal himself. Never use it against warriors or rogues since it doesn't do anything against them. You can use it against ferals so that they cannot instant cyclone you with the proc. And of course, it is an incredible spell against all casters and healers. Death Grip. In 95% of the situations, I don't recommend using Death Grip right on the opener. There are instances where if the opponent is badly positioned, you can use Death Grip right away on the opener and burst the opponent. However, in majority of situations, this ends up in you not being able to get to the target later on in the fight. Since Death Knight has very weak mobility and is one of the few cooldowns which can get you to the opponent, it can also be used as an interrupt. If you play an arena with a hunter as your partner and the hunter misses a trap, you can potentially stand on the trap yourself and grip an enemy target to it. This spell can be used in a number of different ways, so play with it, try it out and test what works for you. Mind Freeze is our interrupt. It is on 10-second cooldown, but you have to make sure that if you don't have the fully talented Mind Freeze in the Frost tree, you will have to have some runic power to use it. I personally use only the rank 1, which reduces the cost by 10 runic power, and I usually don't find myself being below 10 runic power ever, so I'm able to use it whenever it is necessary. It is good to be aware of your surroundings, know where your opponent is positioned, and when you can focus kick. It is a little bit harder to be able to focus kick a healer if you're just a beginner PvP player, but it can be a very strong addition to your crowd control abilities if you're able to do that. Then we have Stun and Gap Closer / Root and Interrupt from our Pact, which will be discussed later in Pact Management section. And finally, Chains of Ice and the Desecration talent also work as strong forms of crowd control for slowing down the opponents. You have a number of heals as Unholy Death Knight. Lichborn is your strongest heal that we have, and if you're able to use it in its full potential, it is extremely powerful. In 90% of the situations, we want to use Lichborn along with AMS. This way we are immune to CC, especially to crowd control from a Retribution Paladin who is able to instantly turn Evil Fear you or Holy Wrath stun you if you have no AMS active and you're in Lichborn, since you become an undead in the duration of this Lichborn buff. That's why they're able to fear you or stun you with the Holy Wrath, just like they're able to with your pets. So be aware of that. Always cancel your Lichborn when your AMS is off. Additionally, while AMS is up, you also get an enormous amount of runic power from it. This is because of a talent where Magic Suppression talent gives you additional absorption to your anti-magic shell, and it also increases the runic power you generate when damage is absorbed by AMS. This is one of the only times when you're probably going to go over runic power cap and you can even spam death coils, either on yourself when you're healing yourself or on the opponent, because you'll be always going over the runic power cap if you're fighting a caster or someone with magic damage abilities and they keep on fighting you and using their abilities against you. You will still keep going over the cap with the runic power, so you can spam the death coils. Ideally, you want to use Lichborn when you're on low HP, because it is an ability that can bring you from 0 to 100 if you have enough runic power. AMS can absorb up to 50% of our HP within its duration, so for a fully geared Death Knight on Cataclysmic season, let's see, I have 153k, so that's around 80,000 spell damage. And again, beware of paladins and priests who can both crowd control you as if you were an undead during the duration of Lichborn. Again, it's Churn Evil from Paladin, which is usually glyphed, so it's an instant cast. Holy Wrath, which is a stun, and Shackle Undead. And also be aware of the fact that Lichborn lasts for 10 seconds, while AMS only for 5 to 7 seconds. If you're against a skill Retribution Paladin, he's gonna use both Churn Evil and Holy Wrath within that 5 to 3 second window to crowd control you if you don't cancel your Lichborn, so be aware of that. But you can adapt your gameplay depending on who you're fighting against. If I fight against someone that I know is not skilled and most likely doesn't know how to use his Churn Evil and Holy Wrath in my Lichborn, I can freely use it for the full duration of those 10 seconds and be fine, because they're not gonna crowd control me. But if I know it's a better player that knows what they're doing, I would rather cancel it and sacrifice the few seconds extra on Lichborn and not get crowd controlled. Another important healing ability is Death Pact. It is a heal with 2-minute cooldown, just like Lichborn, and you need to have an active pet to be able to use it. That means you have to make sure that your pet doesn't die during a fight, especially in an arena against Affliction Warlocks, Fire Mages, where there's a lot of AoE pressure. Your pet may be losing his HP too, just passively. So be sure to use Death Coils to heal it, or ask your healer to heal your pet sometimes too. Normally the Death Pact heals for around 30% of your HP, which is quite a bit. It has the same cooldown as your Raise Dead ability, so there should be no problem in using this heal whenever you need to. Twin Star Apollo tends to fix and bug this ability a lot, in the way that you should be able to use Death Pact on your ghoul or on your gargoyle. In the past, there was no option to use Death Pact on your gargoyle. It would only use it on your ghoul. But now I believe it can use it on your gargoyle too. And I'm afraid that the way this spell might work is that it will sacrifice your gargoyle while it is still active. This way you would be losing on a potentially ton of DPS if your gargoyle is only being used for a couple seconds and it has a few more seconds to go. So be aware of when you use Death Pact and whether you're sacrificing your ghoul or gargoyle. I don't know how it works right now because they keep changing it, so you better try and test it for yourself. It is definitely better to sacrifice your ghoul if you have the option to choose, rather than risking that you would be losing on your most powerful burst cooldown and sacrificing your gargoyle. And the final healing ability that the Death Knight has is Death Strike. It is a very weak heal, but it can save your life in desperate situation. It costs 2 runes, Unholy and Frost rune, so you lose on a lot of potential DPS if you're using a Death Strike. It is good to use it in situations where you cannot hit the enemy target. For instance, if you're fighting a rogue and he has evasion up and you have nothing else to hit, you will not deal damage, but at least you will heal yourself with the Death Strike. And of course, it will also generate some runic power. since you're using an ability that consumes 2 runes. So don't try to necrotic strike the rogue in evasion, but rather you can use this time window to heal yourself with the death strikes. Another time when using a death strike could be helpful is when fighting against a mage and he uses ice block. In this situation you have practically nothing to do, you're just waiting for him unless there's another target to hit. And that's a great opportunity to heal yourself. So don't just stand there and wait, but use your runes effectively. Again, I think this is something that Twin Star Apollo has fixed since, and you're not able to death strike on the ice block, but it used to work. So again, test and try yourself and find out if it works.